Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is let me just think, intimacy. That's what it is. Today's topic is intimacy, and the equation for intimacy being authenticity plus vulnerability equals intimacy. So that's our topic for this morning. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tensions, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, energizing, electrifying all your cells, all your molecules and your electrons, lighting you up from the inside out. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress, tension, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. And softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel that deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling and the tingling, and allow yourselves to become present right here, right now, in the magnificent body that is your vehicle for experiencing life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be with you. As always, I so appreciate this time that we share. And so intimacy is a big deal. I think that we can easily make a pattern of moving through life insulated from the experience of it, from the emotion of it, because emotions can be challenging, right? So intimacy takes courage. It takes courage to show up authentically. If we show up authentically, we often believe that we're at greater risk of not being liked. And that may be the case. And it's likely, I think it is likely that as we show up authentically, we run the risk of polarizing people. That's possible. So authenticity takes courage. Vulnerability takes courage. So to be authentically yourself and to be present to your heart. And good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. We're talking about intimacy today and how really authenticity is the foundation of intimacy, because how can you be truly intimate with anyone or with life if you're not showing up authentically? And showing up in your authenticity can be a scary thing, because you risk the possibility of people not liking you. And I always say that if that you're doing something right, not to be making enemies of people, but if people are reacting to you, as long as you have people in your camp, it just means that you have some presence maybe that's unique. I don't think that we when we're authentically expressed, I don't think that we're the flavor for everybody. When you become the flavor for everybody, the likelihood is that you're not really there for yourself. At least that's my idea. It may not be true. You get to check that out, test it in for yourselves. But when we are authentically expressed, there's a greater risk perhaps of disapproval or other people's judgment, although that's always there anyway. Even like if we're trying to be a people pleaser, people might identify us as a people pleaser, and that's not really truly being authentic in the first place. So might as well be authentic, right? Anyway, so authenticity and vulnerability. And it's really interesting to me because I've been addressing the issues of intimacy with some of my clients, and maybe even more scary than authenticity is vulnerability, is being open-hearted, being connected, uh, being vulnerable uh, in sharing with others. The challenge about being vulnerable is that that we maybe open ourselves more readily to hurt, right? Because we're expressing something that is more dear, maybe more tender. I'm not saying walk around, just doing emotional vomit kind of vulnerability. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about allowing, being able to receive, being present, really, truly. And I think that many of us are starved for intimacy. And what I realize is that with the ability to show up authentically and vulnerably, that we can have intimate encounters with any aspect of life, with any moment in life, because we're really present to it. So I guess what it really comes down to is intimacy is born of presence, and presence perhaps is born of authenticity and vulnerability. I'm wondering what you think about it. So, and I recognize that it can be a scary prospect. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Love Guru. It was such a great, I thought it was a great movie because it spoofed on all of us who are, the transformation junkies. But he had a lot of acronyms, or I don't know if the acronym's the right word here. It's actually not, but he translated intimacy to "into me I see." And I think that I don't know that he originated it, but it was a really fun movie. Oprah was in it, Deepak Chopra was in it. I recommend it. It's an oldie but a goodie. But I think that it's true that intimacy is "into me I see," in that in order to be intimate, it really requires presence. It really does require authenticity, because anything that is an inauthentic expression is a barrier. It's a barrier to our own experience, right? We are putting up some kind of resistance or wall to our deepest connection. And part of that wall is fear, right? Is the desire to be safe, to be protected, to not have our heart hurt, to not be vulnerable, right? So vulnerability in and of itself is not the recipe, I don't think, to intimacy. First, we need to have the courage to be truly authentic. And what that means too is listening to the messages from our heart and soul. So that includes the messages of this isn't the place to be opening my heart. You know, there are times and places that are more, and this might sound like a contradiction, maybe it is a contradiction. You can help me sort it out if you like. But when we follow our own knowing, I think that we really get guidance. And I think that we get ourselves in trouble a lot of times when we override that guidance, or when we value someone else's perspective, or when we allow someone else's strength to override our own knowing. And the voice inside is there directing us, and sometimes it gives us messages that we don't like, so we decide, or we rationalize not listening. So an example for that, this conversation came up in relation to trust. And that's why intimacy is very much about being connected with self from the beginning, as far as I can say, as far as I can see. When we meet somebody and we have a feeling about that person, and then we override it because we want to be more generous of spirit, for instance, maybe I get a message like, oh, stay away. And I say, no, I see the diamond in this person. And most often later that comes back to bite us. Not all the time, but many times, most of the time. And listening to that inner voice, that's part of the foundation of being authentic. You know, being honest with oneself, being attentive to those messages, and that knowing is a really foundational thing to authenticity. And when we are truly present, every experience can be an intimate experience. Every experience can be touching our heart. So I guess we get to question, what is intimacy to begin with? You know, what does it mean? Like, I think that at its foundation, intimacy is a sense of connection and maybe communion, you know, where there is no barrier, I guess. So beautiful, Rosalind. Thank you for that. Intimacy is being responsive. The opposite would be insignificant. Wow, that's interesting. That's really, really interesting. Intimacy is being responsive. The opposite would be insignificant. Insignificant. So maybe my brain is just going woo, like, because I'm not, like, I get what you're saying on a visceral level, and the words aren't coming to me to be able to articulate why that's true, and I get it. So intimacy is maybe being connected enough to be responsive, and the opposite would be making the experience or that connection, it may, or the other, whatever it is you're connecting to make it insignificant, so that you're not connected and therefore not responsive. I don't know if I did a good job of that, Rosalind. You got to give me some feedback there, but I love that. That's really quite brilliant. So it's kind of like the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. I think that that's maybe, does that sum it up also, Rosalind? Because, awesome, thank you. We got there. That's awesome. Brilliant on your part. So I think that we get to see that too, is that intimacy at its foundation is connection. And so its opposite would be is lack of even recognition. So the opposite of love not being hate, but indifference, because hate is passionate as well as love is, right? And love doesn't necessarily have to be passionate. Love can be compassionate too. Don't you just love language? I really do. And I get in such a tangle sometimes, to just be trying to lay things out, figure it all out. And in the end, it's not about all the language anyway. But we can use the language to generate a more visceral experience sometimes, to stimulate that. And at the same time, we can use language to separate ourselves from those experiences. So anyway, intimacy, being present, being connected, being open. And I know that that's something that is frightening for a lot of us. I was with a client yesterday, and it was really interesting when looking at their response to love. Like this love, it just grew and grew and grew and became so big that their first response to it was back off, overwhelming. And I think that is not an unusual experience for so many people. Good afternoon, Pat. Welcome. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about intimacy today, and the equation for intimacy being vulnerability and that's so funny. I've forgotten authenticity and vulnerability. And if you have a better equation or another equation, share it. Why don't you? But as far as I can tell, that's a good working equation. And so Rosalind says authenticity and vulnerability. If someone intends to be in the light, it's important to observe own life and look at lower vibrations. 100%. So how can we truly be intimate with someone else if we're not being authentic? So being authentic is a willingness to see what's there in ourselves, to be present to what's there, and to not be in denial or resistance or pretending. That it is important to observe our own lives and to be alert to all of the vibrations, lower vibrations, higher vibrations. Authenticity comes. Good morning, Susan. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about intimacy as a function of authenticity and vulnerability, and authenticity being a foundational alignment, I guess, with our true expression. So there's a level of honesty and self-acceptance that comes along with authenticity, to be our authentic selves, right? And so these are things we get to. Maggie agrees. That's the ticket. So to be unabashedly ourselves, and that can be a lifelong challenge, right? A lifelong journey to discover what that looks like, to be unabashedly our authentic selves. And I guess there could be levels and degrees of authenticity. in that obviously if we're not truly authentic, then we're not authentic. But I mean, maybe it's a black and white thing, but I tend to think that it's probably something that arises in degrees or maybe in fluctuations, can we say, rather than, it's, you're either authentic or you're not. But maybe there are moments of authenticity and moments of less authenticity. And so Maggie seems to be saying we got it right there. I don't know. What do you think? That we go in and out. Some situations may trigger us so that we hide. I guess another factor in this is visibility, right? Like part of authenticity is a willingness to be visible, to be seen. And that can be a really scary thing for a lot of folks, is a willingness to be seen. So it becomes this rabbit hole, doesn't it, in a little bit of a way. But intimacy, I guess it boils down to presence. Everything seems to boil down to presence, right? That when we are really, truly, fully present, that that life itself and the experience of life itself is really quite an intimate experience, a connected experience. And so I wonder, is that in your awareness, does that align with your perspective on intimacy? I know a lot of people are intimacy averse. And what is it that drives that? Why would we be? And I think it is because of the vulnerability. When we show up as our authentic selves, we run the risk of rejection and lack of acceptance, perhaps. And that vulnerability leaves us open to potentially the potential pain of that, unless we can find our place in presence to be accepting of the fact that not everybody likes whatever flavor we are, right? And that's 100% okay. Yeah, I don't know. Help me out here. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts about intimacy? And how do we cultivate intimacy? I think that how we cultivate intimacy is by cultivating presence. I'm wondering, what do you think? What is intimacy to you? And is it something that you need to cultivate consciously? So part of this conversation is coming from a place where yesterday I had the delight and privilege to meet in person someone who's been a friend through Zoom for, I think, maybe more than a year and a half, maybe even more than 2 years. I'm not really good with time. Span of time, I'm not really sure how long it's been, but I'm part of a group where we meet on a weekly basis on Zoom, and we actually got to meet in person yesterday, and it was amazing. It was cultivate intimacy, Rosalind says, not going to bed tired or sleepy. Oh, you're so funny. You're a funny person, Rosalind. They're all different degrees of intimacy, right? Exactly. So anyway, so we got to meet in person, and it was the same or an affirmation, confirmation of the intimacy that we have experienced over the past year and a half or 2 years, however long it is. It's really remarkable, really, really remarkable that we can create an intimate connection through Zoom, right? I mean, it's amazing that we can feel one another's beingness through this virtual environment. It's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? That where we can foster these connections and heartfelt connections with people. That it was so funny because my friend said it feels exactly the same. Except that we got to really hug each other. So that was amazing. And to be sitting across from each other and to share a meal together, and to just be able to talk, to chat, to engage, and have a shared experience in real life, IRL, right? It was amazing, and it was very intimate, and quite beautiful. And so what it makes me realize, you see the bricks waving, they're not really bricks. It's a backdrop, and Maggie is flying around the room, so she's making waves, so to speak, and we're in a quantum dimension and things are shifting, right? Anyway, I think it's absolutely remarkable that we can create connection on so many different levels, in so many different circumstances, and develop intimacy that fills us up, that feeds us. At least I can say that it feeds me. And I know that there are people that I've kept at arm's length in my life, and I guess so many of us have places where we just hold out. We don't share certain things with people. I don't think that intimacy is dependent upon sharing everything. Or I think what it's dependent upon is presence more than anything else. So authenticity is part of presence, and vulnerability is part of presence, and connection. So with that, another lovely morning with you. I want to say thank you again and again and again. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. I want to say thank you. Please check out the other amazing programming on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page, EWN, One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And until next time, it's such a privilege to be with you. And I'm so grateful. And thank you for creating this space of intimate connection.